Hello and welcome back to Skeptic Skeleton Streams. And we're back today to answer some reasonable questions for anti-SJWs. I find it important to clarify two things. One, yes, I know I'm late. I'm supposed to stream on Sundays. Sue me. Two, yes, I'm terrible at promoting my streams. And three, no, I do not identify as an anti-SJW. However, I do believe these questions provide valuable insight into maybe my opinions on social issues that you might not get from my videos. That won't prevent me from trying to answer these questions in as skeptical a manner as I possibly can, but at least you'll get a good idea of how I apply my skepticism to other topics besides religion. So let's get into these questions and see how good or not good they are. Also, just for future reference, when people do get here in chat, I can see the chat, but I don't have two screens. So I'm going to be flipping back and forth between the video and the chat, so bear with me. All right, let's get into it.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I can. I can understand the irony of those who heavily criticize individuals under the pretense that they are snowflakes that require safe spaces, and these individuals also cannot handle the concept of a person who identifies as a man wearing a dress, and they view that as the absolute death of masculinity that must be stopped at all costs. I completely understand the irony in someone holding both of those positions. I am fully aware of that, yes. I personally don't hold those positions, but I'm aware of individuals that do. And I'm not naming any names, but you know who they are, and they know who they are.
What is it with you people and skulls?
Leave me alone, alright? Skulls are cool, and logic stole my skin, which is the lore that I'm choosing to go with, so yeah. Leave me alone, alright? I'm just living my best life. I'm just out here vibing. Why you gotta come from my channel specifically?
How do you define right-wing? Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash...
And of course my internet is playing along.
Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you?
So, I believe the question was, how do you define right wing? Well, that's tricky. I don't have a particular definition of right wing that I specifically adhere to. I go based off of the definition that other people present to me. So if someone else says they identify as right wing, I ask them to explain what that means, and then they explain it to me, and then I operate under that definition for the duration of that conversation. I don't like to enter the discussion with any preconceived notions about any particular position, because I may very well be wrong, and I may very well be projecting my own ignorance onto someone else's position, which does not lead to a productive discussion where anyone actually learns anything. So I don't have a definition. I go based off of the definitions that other people give me. However, if I'm critiquing definitions, I do think that saying one person defends one side and bashes another side is a bad way to define any given position. An individual, such as myself, can defend specific people on one political side and bash specific people on another political side, and that does not automatically make me on the side of the people that I'm defending. I can defend one thing that Donald Trump said. I mean, I can't, but I'm speaking hypothetically. I could defend one thing Donald Trump said against something that Joe Biden said, but that doesn't automatically mean I support Trump just because I defended one thing he said against Joe Biden. You see how that doesn't really make sense? Okay, cool.
And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
I can see how labeling people as SJWs is a pejorative, because essentially it dismisses individuals from conversations and labels everything as to social justice. And don't get me wrong, I do think that there is some validity to the literal phrase itself, as in trying to define someone as being so pro social justice that they are advocating to the extent of a warrior without regard to the actual consequences of their actions. However, I understand social justice warrior has become a pejorative. I get that. I would get that that's become a dismissive way to dismiss people who have even the slightest left-leaning idea. That being said, I don't necessarily agree about the term regressive. I think the term regressive has a very specific meaning, but again, this depends on who you ask. And I think that is specifically a criticism rather than just a pejorative insult to dismiss someone. Kind of like calling someone a liberal or a conservative. It's not meant to insult you, it's meant to understand your position.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
I would like to think that by doing this stream, I am very much trying to have conversations about the issues that I feel matter, once I decide what those issues are. However, I would like to point out that this is not a common thing that I have noticed. That's not to say that it never happens, but I do not notice this as a common thing that is done a lot, where people tell other people to drink bleach. It's more often than not people threaten to do harm to themselves because they cannot sustain whatever it is that they're going through. Ergo, the phrase, "I wish I could kill myself," or something along those lines. That's not the phrase. But the point is, people are much more likely to use self-deprecation rather than alternative deprecation when it comes to these specific issues, as is my observation on the tube that is you.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see.
So, why would you expect to see that on my Twitter? I don't know why you would expect my investigative attitudes to always necessarily be reflected on my Twitter. I don't expect that of yours. It's okay to not spend every single moment of your life being a super skeptical, rational individual analyzing everything. It's okay to make a joke. It's okay to watch a video and just have fun. It's okay to just turn off your brain for a second and live a little. However, I don't encourage one live in that state, but it's okay to have moments like that. You don't have to watch a movie and break down every single aspect of it. I don't come to the movie theater and say, you say you're an evidence-based individual, but you're watching this movie and you're not even criticizing it. Yeah, because that's not the point. So I don't know why you would expect to see anything of the sort on my Twitter feed when I don't expect to see anything of the sort on yours, especially with 150 characters limits. How rational of a discussion can we possibly have with such a strict limitation?
How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
No.
As far as the trolling and the shitposting thing goes, again, it's a joke. Why do my jokes have to be so critical and so hyper-focused? Why can't I make jokes sometimes? Because that's what this sounds like. It sounds like you can't make a joke. Why can't I make a joke? Or why does my joke have to be as critical and analytical as anything else that I do? I can troll, I can shitpost, I can just have fun, and that is okay. Is it not? As far as TLDR, that is basically summarizing, and I don't understand what's wrong with summarizing information. Again, we're operating on something like Twitter, which only has 150 characters. I cannot give you a concise understanding of complex topics like feminism in 150 characters, so I have to summarize things. Unless you want to go down the rabbit hole of thread after thread after thread after thread after thread and get lost in the sauce of the conversation, which has happened to me. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to check the chat and say hello to Satan's little helper. I appreciate your support. Thank you for loving my videos. You have terrible taste and I appreciate it. And now I'm going to continue to go back. I will be periodically checking the chat, so I promise I'm not ignoring you. I just don't have two screens, so gotta look at one chat at a time.
Seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
Again, why are you coming for my life? I feel so personally attacked right now, and honestly, I just came out here to have a good time, and I don't understand why. Why are you personally attacking me specifically? I feel some kind of way right now.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had, and only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
And the YouTube ad is going to come in. And I paused it. Great. So as far as, again, the question, yes, I am aware that people now use terms like SJW and regressive. I thought I paused it. I thought I paused the video, but it didn't care about me pausing it. Yes, I'm aware that people use terms like SJW and regressive to diminish and invalidate conversation and just dismiss someone with even the slightest left-leaning idea. I'm aware that people do that. But I don't quite frankly care, because how other people use words is how other people are going to use words. That's not something that I can control, so it's not something that is worth my time, effort, and energy stressing about. If I can't control how other people use certain words, why do I even care? So yeah, I'm aware that other people do that, and I'm aware that other people redefine it to basically mean, you have a liberal idea and that's bad, you're an SJW snowflake, get out of here. But I don't care, because that's not what I mean when I use those terms. And if you're having a conversation with me, then you have to have the conversation on the terms I'm using and the way that I'm using them. Otherwise, you're not talking to me, you're talking to somebody else. So anyway, let's get past the ad.
Tattoos, you don't really see any.
Just a side note, I really feel like YouTube is targeting me. It gave me an ad for tattoos and I'm a skeleton. I'm just saying, hopefully someone else noticed that. I'm just saying.
Last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies?
I haven't committed any felonies, and I don't know who the Ralph Retort or Ethan Ralph is. So, we done here, or... Because I find this interesting that you just found insert random guy here. You didn't even explain how he's associated with anti-SJW-ism. You just found a random guy that committed a crime and had a YouTube channel, and now you're trying to lump him in with other people that have YouTube channels. You haven't even, like I said, you haven't even explained how he's connected to being an anti-SJW, so what am I supposed to do with this information? Just believe you and assume that because this guy committed a crime, allegedly, all SJWs commit crimes? What is the message you're trying to get across with this question here? And how would you expect me to honestly, earnestly answer it?
Like, you might want to work on that?
And how do you suggest that I do that?
I mean, I thought the Ralph retort was so rational when he was fantasizing about beating up women with dyed hair, but then he assaulted a police officer, and finally I was convinced.
I don't know who that is, and I don't care, and you've not given me a reason to care, so we're just gonna keep on going.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Perhaps it's because I don't disagree with the strongest, most robust feminist arguments. Feminism is a very broad topic in and of itself, so it's hard to address it all at once, but I'm going to address it in the bits and pieces that is presented. As far as this specific question is pertained, yeah, that's not just something that I do with feminism, that's also something that I do with theology and religion. I don't go after the arguments that I think are good, because if I thought they were good, I would agree with them. And now, religion's slightly different in the sense that I don't believe that there are good arguments, or not that I've been presented with as far as religion is pertained. I have not seen any good arguments. However, if I was aware of arguments that were stronger, I would go for the arguments that are most popular, not the arguments that are strongest, because I am not doing this for myself. If I was doing this purely for myself in my purely investigative nature, yes, it would make much more sense to go for the strongest argument you can find. However, you go for the low-hanging fruit and the weakest argument because those, unfortunately, the ones that tend to be the most popular. This is why people address flat earthers, despite the fact that flat earthers are not a massive majority of the population, because it's still popular. There are still a significant amount of people that are flat earthers and believe bad flat earther arguments. So those people still need to be addressed. And the same applies with feminism. It doesn't make sense for me to address a strong feminist argument. It's a strong argument. Why would I even disagree with it? And if I disagreed with it, I might as well consider it low-hanging fruit. So I don't even know how to do what you're asking, let alone why I should. So I'm not interested in challenging myself per se. I'm interested in offering a skeptical perspective to popular views that people might not have heard. That does me no good to do that with a strong, highly academic feminist argument that no one has heard of because they haven't gone to college.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing, as anti-feminists, to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered?
I'm not necessarily convinced that the solutions have anything to do with gender, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I don't consider myself an anti-feminist, but I'd be willing to have conversations about anyone on how to solve any particular issue, as long as we are aware that I am not a professional, I am not a politician, I am not an expert, I am just a skeleton on YouTube who says some things. As long as we are aware that I am not overly credentialed, or not credentialed at all on the subject, I'm willing to discuss and have conversations on anything, have fundraisers, whatever the case may be. I'm all for helping and trying to fix problems. Let me just check the chat for a second. Satan's Little Helper is still here. Thank you for liking to watch my videos. Why does one left idea make you a bad person to them? I don't necessarily think that it's one left idea makes you a bad person. It's that they assume you are like a bad person. So they make us an assumption that if you have one left idea and this other radical crazy person that does crazy things has a left idea, you two obviously must be the same. They lump you in the same category and dismiss you. So I don't think it's intentional that they're trying to say you are a bad person, but they're like, hey, you have hair. I met a guy that was a terrible person that had hair. You both are the same. Now that is ridiculous and stupid, but that's how humans make generalizations. Also, yes, YouTube would show me a tattoo ad because I have no skin and YouTube has no soul. So let's get back to the questions.
And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So, yeah.
I'm all for it. Again, I'm all for it. If I remember, I have terrible memory, I'll reach out to this person. Hopefully this person reaches out to me. This video is at least 5 years old now, so that probably won't happen. But if it did, I'm open to have conversations with anyone on any issue, fundraise, raise awareness on issues, whatever have you. I am all for trying to solve the problem.
What is third wave feminism? Because
third wave feminism is the most recent incarnation of feminism. It is the same thing. Third wave feminism is to feminism as generations are to generations. It's the same thing as if you ask me what a millennial is. It is the most current iteration of young people. And third wave feminists are the most current, youngest iteration of feminists. And more specifically, this depends on who you ask, it refers to types of ideas. It is widely believed by some people that first wave feminism fought on the very, very basic rights. And then second wave feminism focused more on the social issues, the more social rights of dignity and respect and things of that nature. And third wave feminism focuses on issues, depending on who you ask, that are not as important. So the distinction is both an age one, and it depends on the ideas and who decides to group the ideas which way. Again, kind of like the question about right wing, this is going to vary wildly depending on who you ask. And I tend to take the approach that I go based off of the definition of the person I'm talking to. So I don't have a particular definition of third wave feminism. It depends on who I'm talking to and what they think third wave feminism is, and then we discuss it from that perspective.
I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So
what this means, as far as I understand it, is the same thing as I have no issue with solving problems, but I don't necessarily think this solution is the most effective way to solve insert problem here. So I might not have any problem with the idea that men and women deserve the same rights and deserve the same dignity. However, I might not necessarily think that forcing everyone to earn the same amount of money is the way to go about achieving that end. I'm not saying that's a position I hold, and I'm not saying that's a position I don't hold. I'm saying that's a hypothetical way in which someone might address third wave feminism as separate and distinct from feminism in general. Yes, men and women should be treated as equals. However, this is not the most effective way to treat them as equals. That is what it means when someone says they have an objection to third wave feminism, but not feminism in general.
So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
I just went through a whole hypothetical example with you, Steve. Come on, keep up.
What?
Oh, wait, let me check chat. Everything can be radical. Okay, Satan's little helper. Everything can be radical feminism. It's not bad on its surface. Equal rights for women. What's wrong is that it's wrong. What's wrong with that? I cannot read. I don't know why. I can't read the English language today. I'm all for it, but there are radical feminists that really want to treat men like shit, basically. So the point I believe Satan's little helper is making, and I'm sure they will correct me in chat if I'm mistaken, is basically they're all for feminism. They're just against radical feminism because radical feminism has ideas that are detrimental to its cause, like hating men or wanting to treat men badly as a means of trying to equal the treatment between men and women. This is a prime example of what I was talking about before. This is an example of what someone could say is third wave feminism and what's wrong with third wave feminism specifically, and how that's different from feminism in general, which is just men and women equal. So, to answer your question, Steve, Satan's little helper answers your question. And Satan's little helper will be sure to correct me. I'll check back in chat after a couple more questions.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait! Sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men but no ladies? Fuck you! Get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit!
What?
Now, both of those clips were taken out of their original context, so I don't know what either of them are referring to, honestly. So I can't make any kind of judgments on them. I have no idea if either person is a feminist or a men's rights activist or anything of that sort. All I have are these out of context clips and people making assumptions that they're feminists or men's rights activists, and then that they represent all men's rights activists or all feminists, which I don't believe because I don't have the full context of those clips. So I can't answer this question because I was just given some random out of context clips, and I can't take that as information because it's not information, it's just random out of context clips. Who are these people? How do we know what their how do we know what their political leanings are? How do we know if people are saying they represent each side? There are so many questions you can ask, but you can't really ask because the person hasn't provided any information. You see the problem with providing just random out of context clips and then demanding that someone answer for them. There's not enough information in the clips for me to answer. So, can't answer that question. However, I do find this question particularly interesting because it was a few questions ago that this particular gentleman on the screen asked the question of basically branding, of basically being right wing and why it's not fair to be called as right wing. I don't necessarily see a distinction here. You don't want to be labeled based on the actions of some random feminist out of context clip, whatever. But at the same time, if I defend someone, that automatically means I'm on the same side as them. And I don't understand how both of those things work at the same time.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists?
And this is where I would like to point out, Steve Shives, this is another answer to your question. Agreeing with some feminists but disagreeing with others could be a good example of, I agree with feminism overall, but I disagree with third wave feminism. This would be a prime example. Second, this goes to the point that I immediately was just talking about labeling sides. I was just asked how this represented feminism and another person represented men's rights activism, but now this person does not want to be lumped in with feminists altogether. It's not fair. So I'm trying to figure out, am I the one that is lumping people together, or are you the one that's lumping people together? Because the way these questions are asked, it's not clear to me in particular. I hope I'm making sense.
Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you?
No. And I would not label you or hold you responsible for ideas that you did not espouse. Whether you identify as a feminist or not doesn't matter, because your definition of feminism can be radically different than a radical feminist definition of feminism. I'm not going to hold you to the same standard that I might hold a TERF because you don't identify as a TERF. And it's not fair to lump you both together because feminism. So, no, I wouldn't lump you together based on random arbitrary ideas or even labels, and this is the prime reason why I do my best to avoid labels. This is why I don't call myself, or I don't repeatedly actively use the word, a member of the atheist community, or a feminist, or an anti-feminist, or a liberal, or a conservative, or a centrist, or anything, because once you label yourself, people are going to associate you with other people that also have that label. Which is why I try to stay as in the middle skeptic as I possibly can, because I don't want to have to answer for anyone else who has ideas and uses the same label that I do. So I avoid labels for this reason in particular, is what I'm saying.
Even if you don't agree much.
Wait, let me check chat. Okay, Satan's little helper. Got it right on the mark. Most feminists just go to rallies and support the rights for women, such as not allowing a girl to be on, such as a coach not allowing a girl to be on the baseball team. But there are radical feminists that literally say we don't want no guys, the boys baseball. We just want women. These are the ones we have a problem with. So yeah. Satan's little helper, just further explaining the point of this is an example of third wave feminism, and this is an example of how someone can disagree with an idea in third wave feminism and still support the idea of feminism in general, because Satan's little helper is all for allowing women on baseball teams, but he's against the idea that we then have to prevent men from being on baseball teams. So just this is further extrapolation to Steve Shaw's question. But also to be clear on my answer to this guy that I was just talking about, to make sure I actually answer his question consistently, I'm not going to hold you to account for ideas you don't personally espouse. Regardless of what your label is, I don't care if you identify as a liberal, a conservative, a centrist, whatever, I'm not going to hold you to task for ideas you don't personally endorse. Especially since different people have different definitions of different labels. It's not fair for me to assume what you mean when you say you're a liberal. Anyway, next question.
Because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems. Then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years?
Isn't that precisely what you're doing right now? Like, you seem to be taking issue with the concept of individuals who address people who don't address what they perceive to be real issues. An example would be someone who is addressing someone they call an SJW, heavy air quotes, And they are addressing this SJW because this SJW is concerned about white people wearing dreads, and they feel that is not the primary problem that we should be focusing our time and energy on. We should be focusing on laws, and we should be focusing on finances, and we should be focusing on food, and we should be focusing on pay and all these other things rather than what hairstyles people choose to wear. And you are condemning that person who is criticizing the other person for addressing a non-issue. So you think that we shouldn't be allowed to address people that bring up non-issues that might be or might have nothing to do with primary topics. But at the same time, in this video, you are addressing those people and you are doing the same thing, from what I can tell. You're doing the same thing that you claim to be having an issue with. You are addressing people that you believe are not addressing real issues. And you are addressing them with the criticism of you are not addressing people with real issues. How is what you're doing in this video right now any different than what you claim anti-SJWs are doing? And why is it good when you do it and bad when they do it?
I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know.
Why? Who decided what the scale of priorities were? I thought each individual got to decide what their scale of priorities were. Who objectively decided what the scale of priorities were?
You've got the real problems. You've got the things that feminists worry about.
Not all feminists worry about those things, so that's a bit of a generalization. Maybe your definition of feminism includes people who worry about those things, but there are other people who identify as feminists who do not care about sexual assault or racism.
And then you've got you going, oh, how dare they?
And then we've got you at number 4 going, oh, how dare they, how dare they. Again, you are doing the same thing that you are complaining about others doing. You are doing number 3. You just are one step behind.
Just, how dare they have different priorities from me? Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining forever for a living. That's healthy.
Yeah, but aren't you whining about people whining forever for a living? And it's healthy for you? Again, do you not see the irony, or I don't even know if it's intentional, but the hypocrisy?
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
I'm not particularly interested in wrecking anyone's views. The reason why I don't address feminist theory in academia is the same reason I don't address Christian theory in academia. Do you have any idea how much Christian theology there is? How many Christians have written how many books on the subjects pertaining to Christianity? Do you have any idea how long it would take to go through those? Do you have any idea how boring it would be to read through those and go through those? Most people don't believe in Christianity because of the high-scale academic theology behind it. They just don't. Most people do not believe because of the vast, deep philosophical argument. They believe because they had a personal experience, or they believe because where did the universe come from? Those are the more popular arguments, so those are the arguments that I seek to address. Those are the ones that hear less of a response, so those are the ones that I'm trying to respond to. The same thing applies with feminism. It does me no good if I want to introduce a skeptical voice to the feminist perspective. It does me no good to talk about the higher end aspects of feminism that most people don't know about or talk about. It does me much better to talk about it on a lower scale where most people can understand it, most people heard it, and most people talk about it. It does me no good to pick some random academic feminist paper that most people haven't seen and don't report.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
None of them. I am aware of almost none of them, besides Christina Hoff Sommers, and I have read none of their books, and I find it unnecessary to do so. How many books have you read on any given position you have on any given topic? Probably not a lot. it's very unlikely and unreasonable to ask people to do deep amounts of research into baseline positions. If I formulate the opinion that I like second wave feminism, it could just be because I understand what second wave feminism is, and therefore like my understanding of it. I don't find it necessary or even necessarily beneficial to have a specific second wave feminist and have a specific second wave feminist book that I read or agreed with or whatever. When you first heard the idea of feminism, did you decide whether or not you agreed with it by going and reading about the first wave feminism and then finding a first wave feminist that you agreed with and then agreeing with them and then you became a feminist? Or did you hear the concept of feminism and then decide if you agreed with the concept or not? I don't get this necessity of not even research, because it's not even research at this point, it's just flexing for the sake of flexing. If we're discussing a specific topic, yes, you ought to do research on that. But if we're discussing is killing people bad, why do I need to go get a book about why killing people is bad? Why can't I just understand what killing people is and then make my decision about that being bad? Now let me take a break, check chat for a second. Okay, Satan's little helper again. Exactly, I might be Democrat or Republican, but it doesn't mean I have to agree with the same thing, with everything they say. Same thing with feminists. I can see a good idea and see bad ideas. It's not all black and white. Why are those people trying to paint people black and white and nothing else? Because that's easy. And that's the short answer. And this is not a feminist thing. This is a thing. Christians do it. Atheists do it. Everyone on... You can find individuals on different sides that do this to opposing people where they lump them all together because that's easy to understand. It's easy to understand we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. It's hard and complex to understand that some of us are the good guys and some of us are the bad guys, and some of them are the good guys and some of them are the bad guys. It is much easier to just pick a side and then, decide how you feel about every issue based on that side, rather than it is to go issue by issue and decide, am I gonna be liberal or conservative based on the individual issue? It's much easier to just go, I'm conservative, so I'm conservative on everything, and I'm liberal, so I'm liberal on everything, and then do the same to other people. Yeah, and Satan's little helper just added, I don't need to read a book that's going to take me 3 hours just to get to the conclusion about Pascal's wager when I can just add the argument head on. Again, you don't need a specific support. To be an atheist, I didn't have to go find an atheist, read an atheist book, and then decide that atheism was good. I could just decide that I don't know what theism is, and I have no good reason to believe it, so I'm not going to, ergo I'm an atheist. I'm very curious if Steve Shives decided to go read books about atheists before becoming an atheist, because I don't think that he did. I don't think that he read books about Christianity before becoming an atheist, but I might be wrong. I might be completely mistaken. That's just the impression that I get, is that he has not done what he is asking of other individuals. And I'm going back to the video.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right?
Yes, I'm fully aware, which is why my videos are structured in such a way that they go through the entirety of a person's video and argue point by point. That's why my videos are so long, and that's why my streams are so long, because I specifically don't do that, and because I specifically go through the entirety of whatever video, article, whatever that I'm reading, and try to break it down as much as I can into its smallest components to understand what it's saying or what it's not saying. So yes, I'm aware that you can't just read the title of a book and then decide whether the book is correct or incorrect.
That being said, how can you expect to understand, critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
But I am attempting to understand what they're trying to say by watching videos like this and engaging with the subject as I am. So yeah, I am very much trying to understand. I have no desire to dismiss anyone or any idea from the conversation. I'm very much trying to understand. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Yes, I acknowledge other people might not do this, but this video isn't going to work if I try to defend other people all the time. So on this particular question, I just got to answer it from my perspective. I am trying to understand. So let's keep going.
trying and failing to debunk study into sexual assault the number one priority for a rational thinker now?
Why is trying to debunk a study that you think is wrong the top priority for a rational thinker? I'm not sure I understand the question. If I believe that there's something wrong with the study, then it should be a responsibility to put it to the test and see if it's legit or not. It is the responsibility of an individual who thinks something is wrong to attempt to correct it. Perhaps, maybe. Again, my definitions of right, wrong, all that stuff. I don't see anything wrong with someone trying to debunk something they think is faulty or inaccurate or mistaken or wrong in some sort of way. Yet for some reason you seem to take issue with people trying to debunk things that they find debunkable. And I don't understand why. I don't understand what the problem with that is, how that precludes one from being a rational thinker or whatever. Also, you don't describe what study you're talking about as far as sexual assault. Even though I have a pretty good guess of which study you're talking about, you don't specifically say the study, so I can't assume that's the study you mean. You have to be clear about what you're referencing so that I can hold you accountable. If you just say some study out there, now I can't hold you accountable to any particular study because you didn't say any particular study, you just said some study out there.
Doesn't it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it? Nah, it's fine, it's the feminazis, we have to stop them. They're taking away our video games.
Again, it'd be really nice to know where you get these random quotes and ideas from. Because at this point, you're just saying these are things that other people believe, and I have no good reason to believe you. So, again, futile attempts to debunk a study you haven't read, demonstrate that. Prove that that's what's happening. Back up what you're saying. Or just don't and expect random people to believe you because you said something on the internet, like everyone else. Again, and as far as this quote, no idea where this quote comes from, so I don't know what you want me to do with the information that you haven't bothered to verify.
Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but we can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
Why not? Have you ever met someone of the conservative position that video games cause violence? They very much want to destroy video games. So why can't you? And by destroy, this is going to vary depending on who you talk to, but by destroy, basically push them in a direction that people don't like or change them functionally in one specific way. All video games have to have no violence in them. That's how we prevent gun violence. All video games have to have no fan service. That's how we prevent sexism. And both those things could be considered from a fan's perspective to be destroying what they like. But that's a whole other separate discussion that we're not going to get into because you didn't give enough information to go into that. So we're just going to move on to discrimination now. I'm just going to check chat real quick. Yes, Satan's little helper, citation needed. A lot of these are going to have citation needed, but that's going to get really boring and really repetitive if I say citation needed every single time. So I don't. Now let's go on to the next one.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people.
Yes, it is possible to separate criticism of an idea from criticism of people who accept that idea. Just because I'm criticizing Christianity doesn't mean I'm criticizing a specific Christian. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not either, because I do believe sometimes there is value in criticizing a specific individual, especially if it pertains to it. A good example is the whole hell thing. So, this is a point where I would be criticizing the Christian and not just Christianity in general. To the Christian, I would ask, do you think I deserve to go to hell? Now this is personal. Now I am criticizing you as a person. If you say yes, I'm going to criticize that position that you think I deserve to go to hell. And why you think I deserve to go to hell. And if you say no, then we have to talk about why you disagree with God and why God is doing something that you wouldn't do. Either way, the conversation gets real personal real fast. And I say that to say it is possible to separate criticism of an idea versus criticism of an individual, but not always necessary, and it's not always a bad thing to criticize individuals. Sometimes individuals need to be criticized as well.
And yet, this the line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like redhead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out.
Now, obviously this doesn't apply to me because my channel is the size of a grain of rice, but this is most likely referring to bigger channels. And to those bigger channels, the question that I am asking in response, I guess, to this question is, how is calling them out going to be effective? Most likely, if someone is making a comment like the ones you mentioned, they're trying to garner attention. They're trying to be seen. They didn't post something for people to see it and not respond to it. They posted it to bait you. So by you calling them out, you have effectively been baited in. Furthermore, let's assume that that's not the case. Let's assume that, they're just saying it. They have no expectation to bait you or not bait you. How is you reprimanding them going to improve the situation as well? You have a random person on the internet who insults Muslim people and you say, stop it. Now what? Are they more likely to actually stop engaging in that behavior, or are they just going to keep going? Or are you going to censor your comment section? Because if you're going to censor your comment section, now we get into the problem of censorship. And that's a whole separate conversation and discussion we can have about whether that's good or bad. But to be clear, that's advocating for censorship. And if you're not advocating for censorship, I don't understand how calling out random internet behavior you're not committing is an effective means of addressing the problem of mass scale discrimination, if you will. Me yelling at some random internet person who said some insult to Muslims isn't going to do anything. It's not going to change how they treat Muslims. It's probably not going to change their mind. It's not going to change the way they treat Muslims. It's not going to change any laws affecting Islam. It's not going to do anything besides make me and probably them mad. So why do we give these people time of day if they have no actual impact on the large discussions we're having? Why do you care what some random people say in chat or in comment sections? Just curious. Why do you care?
At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people in their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And
again, the reason that I, quote, ignore bigotry that's happening right in front of me is because I don't care. And I don't see why you would care. And I don't see why the Muslim community would care. Again, if we're talking about a hate crime, that is something that needs to be called out. That is something that needs to be addressed. If we're talking about bullying in schools, that is something that needs to be talked about. That is something that needs to be addressed. If we're talking about the random internet comment of egg user 97, does that really need to be called out? Does that really need to be addressed? Do we need to waste time and energy addressing every single random person that insults Islam or Muslim individuals? Or do we have better uses for our time? Again, I think you're putting time and effort and energy into something that's ultimately futile, because these people are not going to change their minds because you called them out on the internet. And that's not going to change how they treat Muslim people. And that's not going to ultimately help the Muslim community to be better because you called out a mean person online. So I don't see the purpose in it, is what I'm saying. Let me take a break, check chat real quick. Easy censorship. I believe you should be censored if you cause harm or could lead to people getting harmed, such as sarcastic terrorism. Again, I think each individual person in this video should be treated as an individual, and we're not going to associate all of them with one person's ideas. However, yeah, that is my concern, is that the only way calling out individuals on the internet could be effective is if you censor them. Because if you don't, then all you did was yell at them, and then they yelled at you, and then nothing happened. So what was the point in the first place? And I'm not advocating for censorship, and I'm not advocating against it. I'm just saying that seems to be the only thing that would change anything, other than you just saying, don't say mean things. Other than you just saying, don't say mean things.
Be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered.
Absolutely. I'm more than willing to have pretty much anyone on my channel on pretty much any given issue. Again, if it's more of a specific issue like politics related, science related, and I'm not educated on the issue, I tend to not go there because I'm not educated on the issue. So I don't want to have someone on my channel and I'm not educated enough to fact check them. I don't know if they're saying something that's legit, if they're saying something that's illegitimate, something that's inaccurate, something that's actually accurate. I have no idea. It's not good for me to have people on my channel that I can't fact check or that I don't feel qualified enough to fact check. So other than that, yeah, I'd be willing to have a conversation with pretty much anyone on any issue. So I'd be more than willing to have conversations on any issue. However, if you come on my channel, everyone, including me, is subject to criticism. I do not pull my punches. So I will fully allow you to come on the channel and I will fully treat you with respect. However, your ideas are all fair game. No one and nothing is or ever should be immune from criticism, including moderate Muslims. So anyone can come on my channel as long as they're aware that both themselves and myself are not immune from criticism. Let's go to the next question.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general?
Well, you haven't defined what systemic racism is, so I can't come to a particular conclusion as to whether or not it exists or not because I haven't been presented with a definition. I hear the term a lot, but I don't hear a lot of people define what it means. And because I don't know what it means, I cannot support it or be against it. It's pretty much the same thing with theism. People say systemic racism and they throw the term around a lot, but they don't explain what it means and how it operates and how it functions and where it came from. Just say it exists and then just leave it there. And I cannot believe in it or not believe in it because I don't know what it is. So to answer your question, technically, no, I don't. But that's only because I don't know what it is and no one has presented me with a definition that I can understand.
If so, what? Okay, just step up, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk.
And now I'm very curious as to why we were talking about pejoratives earlier. If you are someone who wants to be treated with respect and dignity, this is not an effective way to get other people to treat you with respect and dignity. Disrespecting individuals you've never met who disagree with you for reasons you don't know is not an effective way to get respect or dignity. Now, if you don't care about being respected or having dignity, that's fine. But I would presume you would care about such a thing because most people tend to. But nonetheless, all I'm saying is you're being a meanie, and being a meanie is not an effective way to get other people to not be meanies to you. Anyway, let me check chat real quick. Okay, Satan's little helper. It's different when somebody's just trying to get attention, such as a 5-year-old trying to say you wish you would die, than a public figure yelling you to start a riot. Yeah, so I addressed the question in the way that it was framed as far as a random YouTube comment. So that's why I addressed it in that manner. I do believe different circumstances need to be treated differently, but I do believe public figures are a separate topic of conversation because there's a level of interpretation that comes with that. Some of it is explicitly, I'm telling you to do this thing. Other thing is dog whistling, where I'm not telling you to do it, but you know I'm telling you to do it. And others are just not telling you to do it, and you just took it as you to do it anyways. So there's a lot of interpretation that goes into public figures, which is why I'm not talking about that right now. That's why I try to address the question in the way that it was framed and address random YouTube commenter person. So that's why I answered the question in the way that I did. But I don't agree or disagree, Satan's little helper. That's a perfectly valid point.
If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
How do you know that criticizing Black Lives Matter isn't an active way of trying to find a solution to issues involving race and racism? I don't see a relevant distinction between the two things you just described. So I don't see a reason why I can't do one or why one is worse than doing the other. At the end of the day, if I take issue with something that some portion of Black Lives Matter has said or done, I will criticize that. Again, I don't like to label people. I don't like to criticize entire groups. That's not fair. I will criticize specific ideas as they come up. I won't criticize Black Lives Matter. I will criticize a specific sect that ascribe to specific ideas that I take issue with. Anyway, the point is, I think that it's perfectly valid and possible to criticize Black Lives Matter and also find solutions surrounding race and racism. Some groups deserve demonization and some groups do not. How do I know if Black Lives Matter is such a group or is not such a group, or has members of a group that deserve to be demonized and other members that don't? These are the kinds of questions you have to ask coming into these kinds of discussions. So I don't think I directly answered his question in the way that he would have preferred, but that's generally my answer.
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime and what we as white people can do to solve the problems in our community?
This is context dependent, obviously, but I would not do a video on any race on race crime. I would do a video on crime and what we can do to solve that, because that makes a lot more sense to me. It makes more sense to solve the problem at the root than it does to pick at it. It's sort of similar to an infection of sorts. You can treat the symptoms, but if you don't address the root cause, the infection is just going to keep happening over and over and over again. And any doctors that watch this video comment in my comment sections, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a doctor. But in that, as a small example, if we don't address the root cause of issues, then the issues will just keep happening over and over and over again. So I say that to say, I've lost my train of thought and I need to hear the video again.
Black on black.
Oh, yeah. So I say that to say I would never address black on black crime or white on white crime, because I think it's much more effective just to address crime, just in the same way that it's more effective to address coronavirus and have a coronavirus vaccine rather than a black coronavirus vaccine and a white coronavirus vaccine and a disabled coronavirus vaccine. Do you see how that is significantly less effective than just having a vaccine for everybody? That is the same way that I would approach crime. So I would never do a video on black crime or white on white crime. Again, that's going to be context dependent. That doesn't mean I'm never going to bring up those statistics, but that means I'm not going to do a video specifically on those topics, because if I want to address crime, the most effective way to address the problem of crime is to address the problem of crime, not to address the problem of crime by race.
Crime. When are you going to do a video about white on white crime and what we as white people can do to solve the problems in our community?
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, no, we have to stop him, we've got to debunk him now, ah!
Why is it that people making a questions video is so horrible that you had to answer it? This is a prime example of you doing the thing that you don't like other people doing again. How is what they did in responding to that person whose name you didn't give us, how is it that they're responding to that random person is different than you responding to me or you asking me this question? Again, what's the problem with criticizing people who have different definitions? Why should that person be immune from criticism? And if they shouldn't be immune from criticism, why do you take issue with them being criticized? I don't understand the problem here.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity?
I got it from the people that self-identified as racists and proudly identify as racists. Whether they be racists, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, whatever, I got that idea partially from the idea that there are people who identify as such. I'm not saying that's exclusive. I'm not saying that only people who identify as such can be that thing. I'm just saying that there are people who identify as such and are that thing because they just clearly identify themselves as such.
And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racist,
which is not something that I would say or ascribe to.
how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
Again, this doesn't apply to me because it's not an idea that I would ever ascribe to. I would never say that the only people that are racist are the people that say they're racist. So that's not my position. So this question don't apply to me. I'm going to check chat as I do. Nope, chat's good. So we're going to keep going.
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment, as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way?
I'm not particularly convinced that the way of things, if you will call it, is equal or is not equal. I have not been given sufficient reason to believe either, so I do not believe either. In this instance, this is a prime example of what I was talking about before with systemic racism, where people mention it and they bring it up, but they don't actually explain it, and they don't actually give any citations. So you say there are barriers that people of color have to overcome that whites do not, as is documented by various studies, but how do I fact check that? How do I fact check that statement? What does that statement even mean? What information am I supposed to take from that? And then how can I fact check that to see if that's true or not true? Various studies is vague and ill-defined. So again, I can't hold your feet to the fire. I can find studies that contradict what you're saying, and you can dodge the criticism by simply saying, those aren't the studies that I'm talking about. I said various studies, not all studies. You have to be specific in the way that you speak, and you have to be clear. If you're not, I cannot agree or disagree with you on any given topic because you didn't say anything.
And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
I don't. I don't consider it racist to discuss an issue. So, yeah, I don't.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, you know, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not?
Do you understand basic English, period? Because when you say, or rather, not basic English, basic logic. When you say this cat is pretty, are you saying that all cats are pretty? That is a yes or no question. When you say this cat is pretty, you are either saying that all cats are pretty, in which case this cat is functionally indistinct from any other cat, or you're saying this cat is pretty and at least some other cats are not pretty. And that is the thing that people would take issue with. So I don't think you understand how the English language works. You either say things in an all or nothing fashion, or you do not say things in an all or nothing fashion. I understand that saying something is blue is not the same thing as saying everything else is not blue. However, it is the same thing as saying at least some other things are not blue, and that is the point of contention that is brought up in the topic. So, yeah, I'm not convinced you really understand English, because if you're saying this thing is pretty, you're saying some other things are not pretty, or you're saying everything is pretty, and you're not saying everything is pretty, and that is usually where the argument comes into play.
Get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but
racially insensitive? How? Genuinely, how is it racially insensitive to propose the idea that everyone's life matters? To include more people in the discussion of whose life matters is racially insensitive. How? I genuinely want an explanation. This is not a gotcha question. And I don't present gotcha questions. Any question I ask, I genuinely want an answer to. How is it racially insensitive to propose that everyone's life matters in response to someone saying that a specific group's life matters? To include other people in their statement is racially insensitive. How?
but just patently ridiculous.
Again, how, Sway? How? I thought you had the answers.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts?
Yes, that is an offensive idea. However, an offensive idea is not necessarily the same thing as an incorrect idea. So yes, I agree with you that that idea is offensive to some men, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Just like it might be offensive to assume that someone commits a crime, but it might not be an inaccurate assumption. It might be unjustified, but it might not be inaccurate.
If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
No disrespect, I don't know you. I don't know what you do in your spare time. You very much could do that and then just come on this platform and lie. I don't know you, so that's not a valid retort, because I don't know you. You could be lying. Let me just check chat for a minute, because I remembered. Okay. Satan's Little Helper has a lot to say, so let me just go through. Even I can be criticized. I'm just a person in the comments section. Someone in someone else's video. I don't understand these people. Yeah, but if I criticize, I'm talking to you, Satan's Little Helper, because you're the only one here. But no, that's not true. I would talk to you even if you weren't the only one here. But still, if you were, let's say, insulting me in some way that had nothing to do with my arguments, it would not. What would be the point in addressing you specifically? What would be the point in me stopping my streams to address your specific random criticism of the way my skeleton avatar is or something like that? That would just be random and unnecessary and probably ineffective. It probably wouldn't stop you from criticizing my skeleton avatar. It would only cause you to do it more, because now I'm going to give you attention every time you do it. So I don't understand why the person I was responding to thought that that was a particularly effective method to reduce insults. Next comment, I feel like these people are trying to cherry pick every single thing when inserting video, just getting their general idea. Yeah, like I said, there are parts that are not well defined, and they bring up half parts of other discussions that are had rather than reintroducing the discussion to a new person. So bringing up the whole systemic racism thing. If you're not going to define and explain what that is, how do you expect me to answer the question? How do you expect me to answer the question when you haven't clearly defined the terms of the question? You have to define your terms, and you have to be clear about what you mean so that I can decide if you're right, wrong, and hold you accountable. I feel like these people cherry pick every single thing, like a documentary talking about the Titanic, mad because they talk about one person that died. I'd like you to elaborate. I'm going to come back to that. I'd like you to elaborate, if you're here, Satan's Little Helper, I'd like you to elaborate on that last comment about the documentary Titanic thing, because I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, and I'm very curious. I'm going to go to the next question, but please elaborate that, and I'll come back in a few minutes after a couple questions.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community?
If I'm an egalitarian, presumably I won't have people saying man-hating slurs from my community. But this is also why I did the whole spiel before about not adopting labels. I don't identify with any particular community, so this is not a thing that applies to me. But if I did identify as an egalitarian and a part of the egalitarian community, whatever that is, it would not be effective of me to address every random person that says mean things. I am much more concerned as an egalitarian about female genital mutilation in other countries than I am about one person saying some mean words. I don't care. People can say mean things all they want. What I care is what they do. And if you do something, that's when I will object. But if you want to say some mean words about something, I couldn't bring myself to care less. And I don't understand why you care that some people use some slurs somewhere. Do you find it necessary? Do you think that we should just address every single person who ever says anything mean ever? Or do you think it's much more efficient to focus on the effects and the problems that they might cause? I don't care what you say in the privacy of your own home, YouTube comment section, whatever. I care when you try to vote a bill in that might, discriminate against people. That's when I care. So I don't understand why you care about random people saying things.
People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina.
I don't care that they use those terms. They have the right to say whatever they want, and I don't care. And I don't see why anyone would care.
All of these things basically distill men down into the thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive.
So what if it is? Why do I care whether or not someone is offensive? This is what I'm talking about. This is, in an example, third wave feminism. You care about offense. I don't care about offense. I care about what actually has an effect on people's lives. So again, people saying mean words, don't care. And it's a waste of my time to try to argue with this one person who said mean words that you're saying mean words and you're not helping. It's much more effective for me to address the general issue and say, hey, let's make sure everyone has equal rights. Let's make sure let's make sure the pay is reasonable. Let's make sure that healthcare is reasonable, whichever side of healthcare you fall on. Let's make sure that we are addressing the problems in whatever way we can, rather than, hey, you said some mean words. Stop saying mean words, because that's gonna do something. Also, why would you be offended by any of those terms? You would only be offended by those things if you cared about what that random person thought. Why would you care about what some random person thinks?
So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
Nothing, because I don't believe that stopping that behavior is an effective means of accomplishing anything. Furthermore, I don't think there is an effective way to stop that kind of behavior. It's people saying mean words. The only way to get people to stop saying mean words is censorship. And censorship, as much as I understand it, can and probably will come back to bite you in the ass, which is my position on censorship, I guess, if we're going in that rabbit hole. Not all censorship, just strict censorship. So I don't want to get a whole pile of comments saying that, oh, you disagree with any form of censorship, whatever, because that might come down the hill. Since we're switching, let me check comments. Nope, comments aren't updated. Let's keep going.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics? What have they got to do with the argument?
That depends on what the argument is. If the argument pertains to those things, then it might have some validity to it. If, for example, you have a video of a flat earther trying to defend the flat earth, and this person has a lot of followers, it might be important to address that person so that people who follow them can see your video and understand why that person is wrong. That might not be the argument itself about flat earth, but that might be the reason why you engage with the argument about the flat earth. So I'm not convinced that these things don't matter at all, but you are correct in saying that they do not determine whether or not a person is correct or incorrect on any given issue.
Deepak Chopra, for example, a man who trots out an endless stream of pseudoscientific quantum woo bollocks, has nearly 3 million followers. So what? Those people follow him because he tells them what they want to hear.
Okay, I believe you. I'm being sarcastic. If you haven't seen my videos, you won't know that, but I'm using my meme. So, not my meme, I stole a meme. But the point is, why should I believe anything you have to say about Deepak Chopra? Because I could just as easily go to Deepak Chopra's videos and just listen to him say stuff and believe him. This is part of the problem of why I felt it necessary to answer these questions and inject a skeptical perspective. Because I'm not saying you're right and I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is you just said some random stuff about Deepak Chopra and I have no idea how to know if it's true or not. You've given me no way to test if Deepak Chopra actually is just spewing pseudoscientific quantum woo nonsense. I don't know that. You haven't given me any way to find out. And you expect me to just believe you when you say that. Why can't I just go to any of Deepak Chopra's videos and just believe him when he says stuff? If it's not right there, why is it right here? If I shouldn't just believe any random thing Deepak Chopra says, why should I believe anything that you say?
Why?
Also, this whole idea of people follow him because yada yada, again, is a separate thing that you would have to defend to substantiate. I don't know why people follow him. I didn't know that people did follow him. I didn't know who he was before you brought him up. So that's not true. I've heard the name before, but I didn't know other than the name. I didn't know anything that much about him.
Even mention the number of followers you have. What difference does it make?
That depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about the number of followers, then that matters. But we might not be. So again, the correct answer is it depends. But in most cases, it does not determine how correct or incorrect you are or are not.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms?
Perhaps you will want to ask that question to the other individuals in this video that had cartoon avatars and childish pseudonyms. I don't complain about safe spaces or trigger warnings or any of those things because, as far as I understand, those things are voluntary and they are not mandatory. We're not forcing people to make their private house spaces safe spaces for the public, and therefore I have no issue with trigger warnings or safe spaces. So I'm not one of those people that goes on and on about that, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm lost my train of thought. This is why I record videos, because I lose my train of thought.
On and fucking on about safe spaces, trigger warnings.
Synonyms. Again, I am discussing very serious issues that could get me in a lot of trouble, whether that's doxxed, whether that's physically assaulted, whether that's any number of things. There are a lot of ways that speaking up about what you believe can get you hurt. And in order to avoid that, it would be prudent to have some form of protection, like an avatar. But putting that issue to the side, the other reason that I have this avatar is because you can't judge my arguments on arbitrary factors. You have to listen to what I have to say and address my arguments as such, because I'm a skeleton. I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. I'm not of this race. I'm not of that race. I'm not of this sexual orientation, of that sexual orientation. You have no arbitrary features on which to judge my arguments. You must address my arguments as they are. That is why I use an avatar first and foremost, to force you to see me for who I am, the arguments and the things that I say.
But continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms. And whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered, as they say.
Again, this does apply to some people. There are some individuals that do get triggered at the mere idea that they might possibly, conceivably have said something racist, homophobic, sexist, whatever. However, that is a very serious accusation and it should be treated very seriously. Is it reasonable to expect me to not respond seriously to a serious accusation? If you're going to accuse me of being racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, we're going to treat that seriously. I'm going to do some serious introspection, and I will expect you to provide some evidence to demonstrate what you said about me. Otherwise, why should I believe you? My point is, these are very important things, and I don't think someone is getting triggered just because they're treating something seriously. And also, I address that other individuals do get triggered at the mere mention that they might not be perfect.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people?
Again, I have very few fans, unless Satan's little helper hasn't been telling me things. Then again, he is Satan's little helper, so I guess. Anyway, no. I am not willing to do that because they are their own person and they are responsible for their own action. I am not responsible for the actions of anyone who chooses to follow me. If, for example, for some crazy reason I can't conceive of, Donald Trump decided to follow me, I'm not responsible for what he then does after that. I'm not responsible for it when he was president. I wouldn't be responsible for any policies or anything that he pushed through just because he hit the button on my channel. To through all of my followers and find every single person that says mean words and call out for saying mean words. I don't see how that's effective at changing anything to just go through and say, hey, you're saying mean words, stop it. Hey, you're saying mean words, stop it. Hey, you're saying mean words, stop it. That's ultimately what these conversations are going to boil down to. If someone is in fact bullying, you try to stop them, is just, hey, you're saying mean words, stop it. Because this is the internet. They're not actually hurting people, they're just saying mean words. So at the end of the day, I don't find this to be particularly effective. Additionally, I would not expect a bully to be deterred by this. Someone who is actually a bully probably won't be deterred by you just calling them out on the internet. Oh no, you called me a bully and you told me to stop being a bully. That's definitely going to change my attitude now. If only someone would have told me to stop being a bully a long time ago, I would have stopped. I don't see why you would assume that you can have this kind of effect on individuals on an individual scale and just convince them to stop being bullies. I don't think I have that control over people, and I'm not convinced why you think you do.
I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description folder flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads.
Even if they did read it, probably wouldn't change their perspective on it. People who hold a perspective are usually not swayed by someone simply telling them that perspective is wrong or telling someone to stop having that perspective. The same applies with bullies. Bullies probably won't be dissuaded by you just telling them to stop being a bully or calling out their bullying behavior. Chances are, especially on the internet, they're not going to care. Chances are they're doing it to and you are feeding the trolls under the bridge. I don't know why you would even care about some random person saying mean words. And I stress the point of saying mean words because we're on the internet and they're not doing anything else. Now, if someone is going as far as to say dox you, then that is something that we have things in place for. That's what we have the option to report people for. That's what that function is actually for, is when people go too far and actually do something. Dox you, send you dangerous things, or what have you. But as far as bullying as it pertains to mean words specifically, I don't find it necessary to have a anti-bullying stance or campaign. It should be fairly obvious. Don't be a dick to people. And people are either still going to be a dick to people. But people's behavior is not going to be indicative of what I say. If I tell you to stop being a bully, you're not just going to stop being a bully I said so. Just like you wouldn't be a bully just because I said so, because people don't work that way, people.
I mean, a public and ongoing anti-bullying stand. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves?
I don't like that. But again, if I told them to stop doing that, do you think that has some magical power that's going to make them I'm sorry, I didn't know. I was telling people to kill themselves and calling them slurs, but this guy I followed told me to stop, so now I'm going to stop. I just had no idea. Nobody told me not to do it, so I just kept doing it. Is that how you think people actually function? Do you think that people function that way, or is it possible that people who are bad people are going to continue to be bad people regardless of what some random person has to say about them? Follow that person. I don't have any fans in particular, so I know this criticism isn't particularly pointed at me, but if I did, I would not hold myself responsible for the behaviors or actions of my fans, nor would I find it necessary unless I specifically told them to do something and that was bad. Then I would be held responsible because I specifically told them to do something.
Kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, I guess that's just what you're into. Just makes you a dick.
Okay, but let's say I am a dick for all intents and purposes. Let's say I am, in fact, as you describe, a dick. So, you called me a dick, and I don't care. I'm just going to keep being a dick. So if your method was not effective on me, why do you think my method is going to be any more effective on my followers? You calling me out for being a dick isn't going to stop me from being a dick. So why do you think that me calling out my followers for being bullies is going to stop them from being bullies? Let me just check the chat because I haven't checked chat in a while. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so late, Satan's Little Helper. You said you would love to join the stream. You're going to have to, let me see. You can message me in the private chat or in the public chat. Just some way to send you the invite. Email or something to send you the invite. And then you would be more than welcome to join. But I want to go through your other comments. You never call me something like that. I need you to prove it because the burden proof is on you. Yeah, basically how I feel. You want to call me a racist, sexist, whatever. I'm not triggered. I'm just treating the accusation seriously, and I want to know if I am in fact what you say I am. yeah, if you call somebody something like that, it's serious. It requires evidence to support. Otherwise, why should I believe you? Um, Karen's at my gas station. But yeah, so yeah, Satan's little helper. If you're still on, just I need a way for you to contact me so I can send you the invite so you can join. Um, I this is a very rare thing that happens, so I don't know, maybe you can find me on Twitter or something. Just send me some way to contact you via Twitter or something. DM me on Twitter or emails, and then I'll try to send you the invite before the end of this. But if I can't, then I'll invite you to the next stream that I do next week, because I do streams every week, every Sunday. So if I can't get you in this week, I'll get you in next week. So yeah, find a way to get in touch with me, and I'm going to keep going with the questions.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
I don't find it hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online. Everyone is harassed online. That just is the way of things. It's not a matter of not finding feminists to be harassed online. It's that feminists being harassed online isn't special, because everyone gets harassed. And that's not to say the harassment is any more or less valid, but that's to say it is not unique to feminists. And that's all I have to say about that.
Do you understand the key important reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That simple Google Scholar doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research.
Yes, I am aware that that is not a particularly credible way to do research. However, I am also aware that you have to speak clearly and say things in a way that I can understand in order for me to do research. For example, when you say systemic racism, what do you mean? What is that? How do you know it exists? How does it function? How do you know it functions in the way that you say it does? At the end of the day, the burden of proof is on you. So I'm not going to go to Google and find the first paper that backs up my stance, because it's not my issue. I'm not the one making a claim on it. I have no idea what's going on. You're the one that claims to know what's going on. You're the one that claims to know or to have the information. So you're the one that is expected, at least by me, to substantiate that and back that up and explain it and defend it. So I understand exactly what you're saying about research. At the same time, if you're going to tell me things about reality, then you're the one that's going to have to do the research and present it to me.
That you have to have a much broader overview, to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem.
I agree with this. However, it is also important to note that we have lives outside of these issues. We have families or ourselves to feed. We have bills to pay. We have medical conditions to manage. We have entire lives outside of these particular subjects and issues. So it's not reasonable to expect every person to do this unreasonable amount of research on every given subject. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do research. I'm saying that the kind of research you are asking might not be practical or pragmatic for most people. It is generally easier to speak in layman's terms and speak in a way that people can understand, rather than send them a 24-page double-spaced citation on modern feminism. And that's not that much reading, but I'm just saying something. It is much better for you to present an argument in a way that people can understand, rather than just saying, do your own research, shitlords. Because that probably won't happen, because shitlords have lives too.
You do realize that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique?
No. Or rather, I jumped the gun. I apologize. I jumped the gun. How? How am I as much of a social justice warrior as those I critique? Especially when I don't call people social justice warriors. But go ahead. How am I like them?
It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
Why should my social justice be considerate or forgiving or kind? If you're going to say that my social justice isn't those things, I want to know how you know that, but I also want to know how those things are important things at all. Why should I care if my social justice isn't considerate or kind? Checking chat, just checking chat. Aha, I'm checking chat. We are going to have Satan's little helper joining us. I am going to do that. Just everyone give me 2 seconds because I am terrible at multitasking. Also, my internet connection is slow, so yeah, sorry about that. But just to try to make sure you guys aren't bored with awkward silence, I forgot what the last question was about. I am terrible when it comes to this kind of thing. Oh yes, science, reproducibility, all that stuff. Like I said, yes, all of that is very much important. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that there's a reasonable degree to which you can expect people to do their own research, heavy air quotes, because people have lives outside of these conversations, so it's not reasonable to expect them to stop what they're doing, go to their local library, and read everything on feminism to decide how they feel about feminism. All right, so hopefully things worked out the way they did, and my internet is compliant, and Satan's little helper will be joining us soon. I'm just gonna go to the next question, and then I'll wait for Satan's little helper, just so we
as an egalitarian.
just so we don't have too much of a delay. But if I identify as an egalitarian,
I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
what? Literally what? Why are you interested in that? That's such a random thing to bring up. It really is. This is the functional equivalent of, if you're a Christian, I'm interested in, and then you bring up this random book about theology that's not related to the basis of Christianity at all, and I want to know your opinion about this. Why is that important? Why is that something I need to know? Why is it something I would want to know? What even is this thing that you're asking me to know of? Why would I know of this? It's just such a weird, random request. I notice. It's such a weird, random request to just be like, hey, you say you have this position? Books! It's like, what about books? Books! Okay, but what about but books, though? I find it very, very strange.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom?
I don't. Why do you think I want to quash academic freedom?
If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
Again, that's not a position that I hold. I am not in favor of quashing academic education. I am of the opinion that you should be allowed to teach controversial things, or things that at least I perceive to be controversial. I don't believe that we should not teach people things, or we should not teach people feminism, because if we teach them feminism, then yada yada such and such and so and so, and they might become yada yada such and such so and so. So yeah, I don't want to quash academic freedom, so this question isn't for me. There he is. Let's add the person themselves to the stream. Hello there. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, Satan's little helper to the stream.
Thank you.
Before I go forward, was there anything specifically you wanted to say before I went on to the next question or whatever? Like anything in the comments you wanted to explain or anything?
You said you wanted me to explain the Titanic.
Oh yeah. I was still, but I wasn't quite sure what you were trying to say with that in terms of like cherry picking, like a documentary talking about the Titanic because one person died. I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Yeah, I was just stating that these seem like these people are just trying to nitpick certain videos. Oh, sorry, there's a lag or something in my audio.
Yeah,
All right.
I noticed a little bit, but you said they were trying to pick something. Hello, I know my internet hasn't gone
I was
out.
trying to nitpick certain verses.
Nope. That's okay. StreamYard isn't always the best, so
I'm sorry.
but yeah, as much as you can with the lag issue. So they were cherry picking in what sense?
Certain YouTubers and stuff. So when I see like a document, I'm getting so many feedback. I'm sorry.
Oh, hold on. Let me try something. Maybe that's on my end. I'm gonna mute myself and then you talk and see if that maybe helps.
All right. Hello?
Yep, I'm here. I'm just muting myself while you talk, so there's hopefully not as much feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not feeding back no more. Yeah, what I was explaining is like when these people were talking, they were talking about like certain events that. How can I explain this? I got to go back through the video and actually pick out the point. But anyway, the Titanic, I think these people just attacked certain verses or like passages or whatever these people were talking. Like they're just going on random videos and just attacking certain points that they want to attack. It's just like going on to a Titanic documentary and getting mad about them not mentioning this one or two people that died in the Titanic. That's what I was trying to say.
So basically, they're cherry picking in a way where they are hyper focusing on some random detail rather than the larger point at large. Instead of focusing on, and I don't know if you were here for this, but I brought this example up before, of, somewhat, one of, I believe they identified as a woman, brought up the point of white on white crime or black on black crime. Instead, and I said that's not something I would ever do. I would focus just on crime and the major issue of crime. But instead, they are not focused as much on the major issue of crime. They are focused on specific incidences of police on black person crime as opposed to crime in general and trying to solve that as a whole. They're hyper focused on specific examples. I think that's what you're trying to say. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. I don't know if the comment went off like that, but that's what I was trying to explain.
Okay, that's what I had suspected, but I always try to be clear, just in case. So yeah, by and large, I think that's a perfectly valid point. Again, I try to judge each person in the video as an individual, but a lot of them do bring up random things like systemic racism, but not explaining what that is or what that means, and then expecting me to have an opinion on it when I don't know what that is. So you have to actually like explain what that has to do with racism before you go on about it. But you're free to hang around till the end of the stream. I'm just going to answer the last few questions and wrap up. So you're free to hang around if you want to. All right, so I'll go on to the next question.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
I'm not obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian. However, she is the prime example of what exactly third wave feminism is and what exactly people have a problem with. If you remember her infamous quote, everything is racist, everything is sexist, everything is problematic, and you have to point it all out. That is specifically is what third wave feminism is to some people, and that specifically is what people have a problem with. A hyperfixation on everything being problematic rather than the most important aspects being focused on. But personally, I don't care that much about Anita Sarkeesian. I know she tends to come in and out of the public limelight, but I'm not particularly obsessed with her. I just notice sometimes she's here saying something and sometimes she's not.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual state of emotional immaturity? Do you actually imagine that you will be able to perpetuate your adolescence for your entire existence? Wait, did somebody else ask this one? Wait, I gotta... fuck.
I assume that was meant to be a joke, but I don't get the joke, so joke went over my head. Anyway, that's probably going to do it for the stream. That's pretty much all I had to say on the matter. And we got a little cameo from Satan's Little Helper. But yeah, just in general, those are some of my ideas. Those are some of my critiques of the various topics. Those are some of my skeptical perspectives, if you will, on the various subjects. And I know a lot of it was, you have to explain what you mean. If I don't know what you mean, I can't agree with it or disagree with it, but people have to speak clearly. So I cannot make a definitive stance on big things like feminism, Black Lives Matter, social justice warriors, snowflakes, safe spaces. These things have to be clearly defined and talked about in their context, or else I can't talk about them. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Remember, everyone, I appreciate you all a lot. And remember to skepticism consistently, not just to religion, not just to politics, but remember to apply your skepticism consistently across the board. And until then, I will see you all in the next one.